Hey everybody, this is Perch, and just got back to the U.S. It's been a weird, it was a rough re-entry, so to speak. I had to fight a lot of airlines. Got there in the end, and it is what it is. It didn't enjoy it, but took the family out to see Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and I'll do a full review on that later. But it was. It, the short version is that I like Sam Raimi as a director. I've come to the conclusion I didn't want Sam Raimi doing a MCU movie, and it was like taking two elements that I don't really have a big problem with. I'm not a hater of the MCU movies; they're fine. They're very formulaic. So what I appreciate about that, and what we're going to get to with this email that somebody wrote in, is that Kevin Feige has developed a formula. It's kind of like McDonald's. It's not the best food. You're not going to go and say McDonald's. And I'm not hating on McDonald's. It's not like you're saying that McDonald's is the best hamburger in the world, or fine dining or fine cuisine. But it's structured enough so that it's you eat it. You're like, oh, okay, it's fine. Fries are good. It's fine. It's not like Arby's is going to kill you. You knew that was coming. But it's mass produced, and as a result, it gets mass appreciation. Nobody points to it and goes, "This is the restaurant I want to, eat at for the last meal of my life." But you do point at it and go, "Yeah, it's solid. It's there. I know what it is." And that's kind of what the MCU is like. It's one of those things where the formula is so well established that you have to appreciate that they did a good job of making it. But you're kind of hard pressed to point to it and go, "This is the greatest movie or greatest moment of my life." There's chances are. Marvel's movies are not your favorite movies of all time. But the other piece is Sam Raimi, his style of what he does. I like Evil Dead. I like a lot of his earlier work. I like those things. Mixing those two together, anyway, we'll do a review. I said I'd do it later, and I'll do it later. But anyway, getting to this mail, which gets into the MCU. It's about Kevin Feige. So it says, Perch, with the recent discussion of DC Discovery needing to find their own Kevin Feige, can we take the time to talk about his vision of a unified Marvel Universe has required a hell of a lot of retconning, duct tape, and audiences ignoring significant plot holes? It is awfully hard to argue with something as successful as the MCU, but Jesus Christ, we need to stop acting like this cat had every phase plotted from movie to movie. That that simply is not the case, and to think otherwise is just being naive. Planning projects in advance in Hollywood is simply not their strong suit. See the Disney Star Wars sequel. They couldn't even be bothered writing a 3-movie outline. Fuck, even Lucas convinced people he had the prequels planned out. He clearly didn't. It amazes me that I do not hear any pushback about the beautification of Saint Feige. Love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for all the fantastic content. Tell me how you really feel. I think Feige. So in my mind, Feige is extremely good at at several things. I mean, you can't argue with his success. He's good as a portfolio manager. He's good at a number of different elements. Clearly, he can run a studio without a bunch of with that many people and players, and he's had very few hiccups. Scarlett Johansson suing him is one. The whole replacement of Rhodey is another. I mean, just some directors have come and gone. Natalie Portman kind of getting to you've had little things in there, but nothing that bubble up. Kevin Feige keeps his ship relatively bolted down. It's not like Star Wars, which has been, at least from that aspect, whether you like the movies or dislike the movies, that's been a shit show. That's you got to give him credit for that. But in my mind, the thing that Feige does really, really well, and I think he deserves the praise for, is what I was mentioning earlier. He tapped into what would be a easy to replicate and reproduce formula that also was relatively bulletproof to shifts and changes. Meaning, if an actor got tired, if somebody died, if rest in peace Chadwick Boseman, but if something shifted in the plans, he built the movies like Legos, in a sense that he could unsnap a piece and snap another piece on, and just could keep going. He created a formula that was, if you think about it, relatively shallow. The movies have just enough depth to feel meaningful, but not so much depth that they start to topple over if you put them too close to each other. That's an interesting art that he did. That was and I do give him credit for that. He had a structure. That the directors certainly helped, and the other people, the writers, and everybody brought in. But there's a sameness to all the Marvel movies. In this case, it's both I think, their benefit and their flaw. Is that the sameness allowed this kind of flexibility in how you build this universe, and he's able to take credit for every additional piece being kind of what you said, this masterful overall tapestry of being this architect of all these different movies. The reality is, when Feige was doing, Iron Man 2, the idea that he'd eventually be doing Guardians of the Galaxy and Doctor Strange and all this other stuff, the What If show on Disney Plus, that was not in his mind. But what was in his mind was this idea that if I can construct the movies in a way that easy elevator pitch for people coming into the film, easy for people to sit down, watch, absorb, and feel like they got something, they got a stunt. In many cases, I think Feige is the perfect Disney employee because he constructs his movies like they construct their rides. Like you get on the ride and you feel like you had a really thrilling 90 seconds, and you kind of forget about the 2-hour wait in line to get there. And then you go off and you go look for another ride, and you're happy to pay whatever you have $250 a day for a ticket to get into this place. And it's like, if you really start to sit down and look at all these elements, you're like, oh, what am I doing? It's not worth this. But and in the moment you're happy to pay, and that's what Feige kind of constructed and has done with a lot of the movies. So I think he deserves a lot of credit for that. To your point in the mail, what he definitely does not deserve credit for is like he's got some giant pre-planned out, structure. He does not. That clearly he does not. And I think that's all part of the myth and the illusion of building movies this way. It gives the idea that he's a lot cleverer than he is. But you could argue he's quite clever. He's clever because he stumbled across a model that other people in Hollywood should have done. And the clues are all there. I mean, James Bond had some elements of this. The difference is James Bond didn't, emerge to the James Bond cinematic universe where you had, Bond and Bond's cousin who also has got movies going on, and then maybe, the other 6 other members of the agency, and then a robot pal who whatever. You could have. James Bond was built in a similar structure. The difference is Feige used this and said, let's just do as many as we can, and as long as they're successful, they'll keep giving me money to do more. And when I do more, I'm going to use the same structure. I'm just going to keep expanding, and before you know it, you've got this universe. And so that does, to his credit, that's smart. But I do hear people comment to him like, "Oh man, he's just the world's best writer architect." No, not at all. And he's not writing these movies. That is somebody else. So it's an interesting dynamic. In terms of Discovery, does Discovery need their own Kevin Feige? Yes, absolutely. DC does need it, but what they need is not. They don't need somebody who's going to sit down. This may be the flaw in what they did with Zack Snyder and what they did with some of their other approaches. They're like, we need somebody who's going to write this map for all these other movies. Remember, Kevin Feige, when he started this thing, he did Iron Man, and then he introduced Samuel Jackson at the end of it, and then he did another Iron Man, and he introduced Black Widow, and then he slowly, step by step, started introducing more characters. The first movie that Feige didn't have like Tony Stark waking up for a dream where he's got Ant-Man and the Guardians of the Galaxy and Moon Knight and all these other things. He didn't have all that. But that is what DC did. They immediately, when they started this, they did Superman, and that was fine. And then when they got to Batman v Superman, then suddenly they've got Batman having a dream of the Flash, and then on the third movie in, they're trying to shoot for the Justice League, and that's crazy. That's not what they should have done. I guess fourth movie, if they technically count Wonder Woman. Anyway, that was a horrible. They didn't build it up because they were impatient. And so, if Warner Discovery is going to try and replicate this thing, then they do have to be patient. They do have to understand that this isn't something where they can hire their, Feige 2 and immediately start throwing in 60 odd characters of the DC universe in all at once and expect that to work. It will not. You need to build up for time. So I don't think, I think Feige deserves a lot of credit, but not for the things Feige usually gets credit for. I think Feige deserves credit for being, like I said, a good portfolio manager, a good person who created structure and was able to get the system moving. I think that, anyway, that's what I think. Anyway, thank you very much for the mail. If you have a question, you can write in, and thanks for listening.